In today's video, you are going to learn how to build a blog application inside Ruby on Rails that has categories. Alright, so this is the app we are going to build. So we will start completely from scratch. And so we can click on blog post. And so this will take us to the blog show page, and we get the category and also the title and the content. And of course we can also edit blog posts, and we can delete them and also go back to the front page. And of course we can also create new blog posts. So this tutorial is awesome. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it. Right, and obviously this will be the category for this blog post would be, I guess, tutorials. So let's click on create blog, and so this will redirect us directly to the show page with the category, the title we just created, and also the content. If I head over to Locals 3000 categories, we have here all the categories currently in our app. And as you can see, we can edit them, we can delete existing categories, and of course we can create new categories. Let's create a new category called app, for example. And now we have created successfully a new category. And if I head over now to blogs again and click here on create blog and say pizza order app, really awesome. So if I click now here on the categories, you see that the app now automatically renders the new category that we just created, which is pretty awesome. So this is all automatically, and if I click here and create blog, it will automatically work. It will redirect us to the show page again, and we get the category and so on. Now if I go back, you notice that we have here also the categories list, and you also probably noticed that we have here now the app category that we just created. So this is all rendered automatically in the background. And we also display the amount of blog posts that are associated with each category. So obviously for the app category that we just created, we have only one blog post, which is why we get here the number 1. But we have other categories with different posts. So if I click here, and if I click one of them, it will only display here on the front page the blog posts that are associated with the category that we clicked on. So if I click here on games, we will get only the blog posts back that are associated with the games category. Conspiracy theories, only the blog posts that are associated with this category. It's also worth mentioning that I use for this tutorial Rails 6 and the new pipeline with webpacker. So I will also show you how to use webpacker and how to add, for example, Bootstrap to your app, and we will of course also style the app. I hope you will enjoy this tutorial, and if you do, make sure to subscribe, and yeah, let's get started. Alright, so I will create my project as always on my desktop, and I am already on my desktop here inside my terminal. And before we actually create our new project, make sure that you have on your side at least Rails 6 or above installed, otherwise you won't be able to follow along in this tutorial. The reason why I mentioned this is because in Rails 6 quite a lot of things have actually changed, especially when it comes to the workflow. So for example, we have no longer access by default to the Sprocket pipeline and need to use instead webpacker and npm, and you will see this later on where we will add Bootstrap to our app, that the workflow has completely changed. I just want to mention also that we still have the option even in Rails 6 to use the Sprocket pipeline instead of webpack and npm. But I think a lot of people will be more interested to see the new workflow with webpack and bundle, which is why I choose it for this tutorial. So to check out which version you have on your side, simply type in Rails and then the version flag. On my side that's 6.0.1, and you don't need to use the exact same version number as I do, although it wouldn't hurt, but the most important part is that you have at least Rails 6 or above. Now, Ruby environment will always use the latest version that you have installed as the default version. So if you run into this issue in the future where you want to create a new project and want to use Rails 5 instead of Rails 6 for that, you can always specify the Rails version you want to use by saying Rails underscore and then the version number you want to use, for example 5.2.2 underscore, and then just go ahead like you would normally do and create a new project. Alright, and so you can install always the latest version by saying gem install Rails, or you can specify the version you want to install by adding the version flag. This tutorial would be 601. Alright, so with that being said, let's create our project. So raise new, and then I will call mine block on raise. And again, the name itself doesn't really matter. It's completely up to you how you want to call your project. Once you have chosen a name for your project, simply hit enter. This will initialize and generate all the files and install the dependencies. And because this takes sometimes a little bit longer, I will pause the video here and start again once it's finished. Alright, so now that raise is finished, let's cd into our project folder, log on raise, and then let's start creating the model. So raise g model block and title, which is a string, and then let's also add content, which is a text. And later on, when we will add the categories, we will also add additional data to our model, but for now we are fine with that. Let's hit enter, and then we also want to migrate that to our database. All right, so raise-db migrate, and then let's run raise-g controller, and let's call it blocks, and then index. We want also to have the show file, new and edit. Let's hit enter, and then I will open up my text editor by saying code dot, and let's also start the server itself, so raise s, and then inside the VS Code, let's hit Command P to open up the search bar, and then routes RB. So inside here we have now these paths that were generated by raise when we ran raise g controller. So let's remove them, and instead I want to use resources blocks, and we don't need to specify any paths because I want to use the full CRUD. And so let's head over to app views blocks, and here let's create a new file underscore form html erb, and inside here let's quickly create a new form for the form for the block. So then we want to have an F label for the title, and then a text field for the title itself. And then we also want to have a label for the content. And then again, instead of this time, instead of saying text field, let's create a text area for the content. And let's also add a button for now with maybe something like create blog post. Alright, that looks good. Let's head over to new HTML, and here let's render the form. And now let's head over to blocks controller, and here inside new, let's create the variable block.new, and then also let's create quickly the create method. And so here we can say block dot create, and then let's pass the block params, which we currently don't have. So let's create them here quickly under private block params, and then let's add here the params require for the block, and then we want to permit the title and the content. And if you're wondering what this is actually doing, so by default our user could basically upload anything to our app in a form, which is a common technique to hack a web application. And so here we have basically a whitelist, and with that we can basically define what a user can upload. So here we're saying, okay, it's a kind of like a whitelist, and here we're saying he can only upload a user or visitor a title, which is defined as a string in our database, and a content, which is a text in our database. Otherwise, if it's something else, don't upload it to the database, don't inject it, just deny the permission and do nothing. All right, and here let's make an if statement. So if the block was saved, we want to redirect, I guess, to the block itself. And if something went wrong, let's render just the new form and then close that. All right, so with that, let's head over to localhost 3000/blocks. And because we are loading this for the first time, it takes a little bit longer because, as you can see, webpacker is compiling. So again, we no longer use here Sprocket or anything else but webpack. All right, so we have that. Let's head over to new, and we give now a basic form. Let's add some title and content. Click on create blog post, and there we go. We were redirected to the first blog path here, which confirms that this worked, although we cannot see currently the title and the content. But if we head over to the terminal, you see that we also see that we added here a transaction, and that we create a block and added that to the database, and we get here also the title that we passed and the content. All right, let's display the data. So let's head over to show HTML, and here let's add maybe an h3 tag, and let's render the block title. Let's close that, and then let's add also maybe a paragraph, and here I want to simply render the content. Right, and let's head over to blocks controller. Inside show, we want to find the block that we want to render, like so, and with that we should be able to see the title and the content. There we go. Now let's add inside show HTML also some links so that we can navigate easier through our app. So here I would say link to edits, and then edit block path. Let's pass down the block ID, and then let's add maybe a link to delete the blog post, and here we need to add also the block ID, and also very important to add here the method delete. And then we also could use maybe a link so we can move or go back to the index paths. Here we have to add only blocks path. Let's check out with that. If we see at least these links, so the backlink will already work. There we go. And let's take care of the edit and the delete links. So inside the blocks controller, first, actually inside edit HTML, let's make sure to add here also the render form. And then inside blocks controller, I want to add here inside edit first. We need to find the block path or the block ID. And then we want to create the method to update the data. And here we need to pass that one more time. And then we make here simply an if statement. If the block was updated, we want to check if the parents were right. And then we want to redirect back to the block. And if something went wrong, again, just render edit for now. Let's close this. And with that, we're set to go. Let's also create the destroy method. And here, let's find again the block. And as you can see, we are repeating ourselves here quite a lot. And we will take care of that in just a moment. For now, let's just add the destroy method. So block.destroy once we have found the block, and then redirect to the action index. All right, and so if I head over and click on edits, we get the form, and we get also the title and content of this specific post. And if I click here on create blog post, you see that it works. And by the way, if we remove inside our form the string here, it will dynamically render whatever we want to create a new blog post or edit a new blog post. So if I click on edit one more time, we see now the update block string here, which makes more sense to me. So again, it worked. We were redirected. We see that we were redirected to the block again, and we see now also the updated content and title, which indicates that it works. And again, you can always go back to your terminal, and here you can see that we updated data inside our database with the content and the title. All right, and so let's try out to delete this blog post. So this should redirect us to the index page. There we go. And as always, you can go back to the terminal and see that we in fact deleted the data from the database itself. Now let's add to the index file, index HTML, a link to create new blog posts. So link to create block, and then new block path. I think that's much more easier to use instead of always retyping it new. All right, so let's create some blog posts here so that we have something to work with. Again, something else. Here we go. And now the next step is, or the last actually step is to render the data here on the index page. Let's create here iteration. All we need to do is to create here blocks, each do like so, and then we want to take maybe an h3 tag and render here the link to the block title, and then we need to pass down the block path with the block ID. And let's close that. With that, we should now get back all the blog posts that we have, and of course we need to go to blocks controller and define here the variable add blocks. So blocks dot all. Right, there we go. We get here these links, and with each title of the blog post, and if we click on them, it takes us directly to the blog post. Awesome. Now we have here this hash, and that's because I use the equal sign here in the iteration itself. So let's remove that quickly. There we go. All right, so I would say we are finished with the blocks CRUD, which is pretty awesome considering how long it took. So again, that's just the way Race is. And now let's take care of the categories. So let's shut down the server, and here I will use scaffolds to create the CRUD for the categories. So race-g scaffold category, and then I want to have for the category a string like so. Now that's all we need to do, so let's hit enter, and then let's also migrate this to the database. Maybe migrate. Now let's also create the association for our block model. So let's create a new migration, and here I will say add category ID to blocks, and then category underscore ID, which is an integer. So let's hit enter, and then also make sure to migrate that as well to the database. And so let's start the server, and let's head over to the text editor, and let's close here everything first off, and then we need to establish the active record association. So inside block RB, we want to say belongs to the category, because one blog post can belong to a specific category, and the category itself, so let's head over to category.rb, has many blocks. Okay, so one category can have many or multiple blocks that have this specific or particular category. All right, so with that, let's head over to our browser, and let's go here to categories. And so let's create a new category, and let's call this one games. And then let's create maybe another one called, I don't know, conspiracy theories. Create category. So now we have two categories. So the first category has obviously the ID of 1, and the second one of the ID of 2. Now, if we head over to blocks and click here on create blog, you see that we have no access to the category or whatsoever whenever we create a new blog post. So we need to adjust our form. So let's head over to the text editor, and let's go to underscore form HTML. Head over and create here a text field for now for the category ID, and then for the value we want to just use for now the category first ID, just to see if everything works fine. If I refresh now the browser, you see that we have here this text field with the first ID of the first category. And if I would try to create a new blog post, it wouldn't work, because as you can see, it redirected us still to the new page here. And if we head over to terminal, you see we got here the unpermitted parameter category ID. So again, that's because we have to whitelist whenever we want to add data to our model. So down here inside block params, let's add the category ID as well. And so with that, we should now be ready to go to create a new blog post with a category associated to it. So if I hit now create block, you see it worked. And in fact, we can head over to the show HTML file. And here at the top, let's add an h1 tag. let's say category, and here I want to render the block category. And now we should get the category, the first category, which is games. So obviously this is working. However, if I head over and create another blog post, the current setup that we have with the form isn't really something that makes too much sense, because we could add here anything, and we could even add here letters, as you can see, or any number, and this doesn't make sense. In case we would submit this, it would just throw out an error. So instead I would like to have a kind of like a drop down or something like that, where we can only access categories that are existing inside our database. And so to do so, let's head over to _form HTML, and let's customize here the form. So instead of getting a text field, I want to get the selects, and then again we want to get the category ID. And this time I just want to get the category all. So basically we want to add for select all categories that we have. So with that, we will already have now a drop down. So this is very nice, and as you can see, we get 2 results. So obviously this will be the first one, that's the second one, but that's not something we want, because currently we just rendered the hash. So what we need to do is to map through all of them. So let's map here quickly through all the categories. Let's just call the variable C, and then I want to get the ID for now. And as you can see, we get now the first ID and the second ID. And we already know that the first ID is games, and I think the second one was conspiracy theory. So this would obviously work already. So if I add here, for example, 2, create blog post, you see that we automatically added here conspiracy theories from the drop down menu, and everything worked. However, it would be nice to display actually, instead of just the ID, the name of the category. So let's head over to the _form, and let's add here another parameter. Let's add here the c.category, and make sure to add a comma here, save the file. And with that, we should now get, instead of the ID, the name of each category. So if I create here another one called Alex Jones maybe, and choose here conspiracy theory, and click on create blog post, you see it worked. We get the title, the category, and the content. So we can also head over to show HTML and remove here maybe the paragraph and h1 tag. That array is generated. There we go. Looks already much cleaner. Alright, so everything is pretty much working, and the nice thing about the setup is that we can choose here only from categories that are existing inside our database, and we can always adjust the category and create, for example, new or add existing categories, or even delete categories, or like I said, create even more, for example, gossip, or maybe a category called Code Basecamp. And yeah, so everything works. If I head over to blocks again, click here on create block, see that it automatically updated now all the different categories that we have inside our database. Awesome, so we are pretty much finished with that. Now let's talk about how we can style our app, because currently our app doesn't look that well. So like I mentioned before, we will use webpacker and Bootstrap for that. So let's shut down the server. And because we have access to npm, we need to use npm to install the dependency. So what we need to do, even though it's kind of weird to use npm and Rails together, you need to type in npm install and then Bootstrap, and then also we need jQuery and Popper, and we need these 2 additional libraries because Bootstrap is relying on them. So if you just want to add styles, basic styles to your app, Bootstrap is enough. You don't need to add jQuery or Popper, but many examples on Bootstrap or getbootstrap.com in the documentation require jQuery and Popper, so it's always a good idea to add them as well. All you need to do is to hit enter. I on my side have yarn installed, and so therefore I have to type in yarn add Bootstrap jQuery and then also Popper. Hit enter, and so this will install all the dependencies. And so because this takes also sometimes a little bit longer, I will pause the video here and start once it's finished again. All right, so now that Yarn is finished installing all the dependencies, let's clean up the console by holding down Ctrl-C and Ctrl-L. And let's head over to the text editor. I will close here everything to stay organized. And then let's head over to App Assets. And if you're familiar with Rails 5, you probably know that inside App Assets, we had a folder called JavaScript. As you can see, with the new setup in Webpack and NPM, we no longer have this folder inside here. Inside channels, we have files that are related to action cable in Rails 6. So if you want to learn more about that, make sure to check out my other tutorial where I show how to build a Rails 6 real-time chat application. So in this particular tutorial, I talk more about these two files and what they actually are doing. And so inside packs, we have the application.js file. And so this file is very familiar to the file we have inside the asset JavaScript folder. Now, in order to make Bootstrap work with the new setup, all we need to do is to first off import inside the application.js file Bootstrap like so. And then we also need to create a new file inside the packs folder called application.scss. And so this file is pretty much the equivalent to what we had to do in Rails 5, where we needed to recall the application CSS file here inside the style sheets folder. So with Webpack, it looks into the packs folder for a SCSS file. And so inside application SCSS, we have to import the Bootstrap SCSS Bootstrap library, safety file, and then let's head over and import that as well to our application.js file. So application SCSS. And with that, we're pretty much ready to go. So if we head over to our terminal and first start the server. So if I refresh now the app, you will see that we will be able to see the updated styles. So we will see a different font and also the other styles from Bootstrap already applied to our app. There we go. So our app looks already much different from what we had before. And so again here on the index file as well. And notice that we have this kind of bug going on whenever we hover over links, we get this kind of black box. So obviously this is not coming from Bootstrap itself, but that's because whenever we are using scaffold, it creates inside style sheets folder a scaffold SCSS file, and this basically overrides the Bootstrap SCSS, which is something we don't want. So let's delete just the scaffold SCSS file here, and let's refresh our app, and you see that first off we have now these blue links here, and the bug disappeared. All right, so we have fixed that as well. And as you can see, Bootstrap is just working fine without jQuery and Popper because we haven't initialized jQuery and Popper. So again, if it's just for simple styles, you are totally fine with that setup, and that's pretty much straightforward, I would say. But because I also want to show you how to use Bootstrap completely with all the libraries, jQuery and Popper and things like that, let's head over to environment.js. And here I will paste in some code. And the reason why I paste that here simply in instead of typing that on my own is because this is Webpack related, and I'm not too familiar with Webpack, at least yet. So I just copied that, but it's pretty much I think the way to add plugins to Webpack. So I don't think there's really something complicated here. So here we're creating a variable or a const called webpack that points to the webpack library, and then we use environment, which is defined here by Rails at the top from Webpacker, and then we append the plugins and set the $ and jQuery as a variable for jQuery, as you can see, and then Popper for Popper.js. And the way this is written is basically exactly how Bootstrap itself is referring to these libraries. Okay. All right, and so with that, you're pretty much ready to go to use jQuery and Popper as well. So simply pause the video here and retype it, or you can search it because it's pretty much all over the internet already. And I think even on the documentation, you can find these lines of code. All right, so we have done that. Now that we have Bootstrap, jQuery, and Popper initialized. We're ready to style our app, and I will not explain here every single thing. Instead, I would just style the app so that we have some kind of basic styles going on. And yeah. All right, let's head over to the text editor, close everything, and then I will first off style the index page, so index HTML. Let's remove these links here from the top, and then I want to use, I guess something like that div container. And inside here, I want to make use of Bootstrap's flexbox, so the flex. The flex row, and then justify content center. And let's make sure to add here minus sign. There we go. And let's copy that here in. For each block that we have, I want to create a div called md maybe 4, and then inside there a div card, and inside the card let's create a header, and for the header just take the title, paste it in, remove that here from the bottom, and then inside the card body let's add simply just the link to view, and then block path, block ID, and then let's add for the class maybe a btn primary. Right, make sure to add the end tag from the iteration just under the code and the for. With that, should get back this as a result, which is obviously not quite working. Actually, the more I think about that, let's just make it a row thing. With that, we're totally fine. I don't think we need really a flexbox for that. All right, so this looks already much better. Let's add to each call, or actually each card, a margin top of 3 to have some space between those. There we go. And the more I think about that, let's remove the header, and instead let's remove the h3 into the body. Right, and we get that. Let's head over to the Bootstrap documentation and search for the nav bar, and we just copy here the first example and head over to app HTML and paste it here just under the body tag. And let's customize this quickly. Let's call this block with categories, and then we can remove here pretty much all links that we have, including the form, so that we are only left with the home link. There we go. Now let's align this to the right side. So let's change this to MLMD auto. And let's call this here, remove this entirely, and let's head over to index.html, copy the crate link, save the file, and let's head over and paste it here in instead. And then we need to add here also the class nav item. How was it called? Nav. Let's undo this quickly. Nav link. All right. So one more time. I totally forgot how the class for the link was called. So nav link. There we go. So if you click on that, it takes us to form, which is the next step we will style. Let's go form. And here, yeah, let's add here a flex row, the flex, justify content center. Let's take all of that and paste it inside. And then for the form, I want to create a div card, and we can actually do this outside the form. So div card, and then inside the div card, we want to have the div card body. And then we just take the whole form, paste it in, and quickly customize that. So we can already see that if I refresh that, we have now something like that removed here. Inside new HTML, this from the top. There we go. Make sure to add to the card a margin top of 5. And then for the card body, or for the form itself, I want to add a div group. A form group. And then here, let's paste in the label and the title. And then for the text field, let's add here a class of form control. So we have now something like that. All right, looks already much better. So let's copy that and repeat these steps. Wrap that up. And the same for here. Wrap that up. Make sure to add to the content also the class of form control. And there we go. Now we see that's a little bit too small, so let's add here a div col md8 to the top. And wrap that all up, the whole card inside there. Alright, there we go. Now we have that. Let's change also the submit button. Let's add create block, add a class of btn outline, maybe primary. Alright, so we can create a blog post here. We could also just copy that, create here another link quickly. Actually, let's remove that. Just retype that. Link to back, and then blocks path. And let's add also a class of btn outline primary or secondary. Let's close that. Alright, everything's working. We can create a blog post. Let's style also quickly the show page, so show HTML. And here, I guess we create a fluid container and wrap everything inside that container. I think I misspelled that. I think it's called container fluid. There we go. That also margin top of 3, and I mean, I'm fine with that. Let's change the buttons. btn primary, and here let's add a danger, and then here let's add just a secondary. Right, everything is working. Now that we have done that, is there anything I forgot? Let's head over to edit. Move these here. Right. So we got that. We can create a blog post. I would say we are pretty much finished with the styling. Again, just like I said, I would just add some basic styles. Now we are finished with our app. We have added these styles. We have added a full CRUD for the blocks. We have added a full CRUD for the categories. We have connected them together. Everything is working just fine. Now there's actually one feature left that I would like to add to the app, and that is to make use of the categories. Because even though we are displaying the categories itself and can associate blocks with a category, we can really make use of that. So it would be nice to have at least the ability to sort or search a blog post for a particular category. So that's the last thing we will do. So let's head over to a text editor and let's work on that. Now, when it comes to this feature, you need normally at least a decent level of knowledge how things are working when it comes to web development, and especially how Rails works. Because when you think about how should we actually sort blocks by their categories, because if you are familiar with the routes itself, they normally just accept an ID if we have defined the route as such a route. So for example, if I click on this blog post, it takes us to the /block/ID. And that's only working because Rails has specified it as a path that can accept an ID. But I mean, there are many ways to implement that, but let's say we want to have here on our index page some link so that we can display all the categories, and when we click on them we want to live sort them here directly on the index page without creating new paths and doing some crazy amount of work. Well, let's get started. So here on the blocks index HTML file, let's go down here, just under the loop here, and let's create here a new iteration, and let's just call it categories, each do category, and then what I want to do here is to create a link to the category. And now when I head over and just paste here, for example, blocks path, you will see that first of all we will have the error that categories is not defined. That's because obviously we haven't defined that. So let's head over to blocks controller, and here I would say categories equals to category.all. Yeah, and for some reason it's loading really slow on my side, so let me just restart my server quickly. Raise S. Alright, so now as you can see we get all the categories here, and so if I click on them nothing will happen. Okay, it will just redirect us. So how do we sort now a blog post? Because again, if we would add here some kind of IDs, for example to the block, or let's say to the blocks path, it won't work because the index page doesn't accept any IDs or whatsoever. Now the block path itself accepts an ID, as you can see here. However, we don't want to make the category associate with the show page of the blog path, because that wouldn't make too much sense. Let's add here blocks path, and what I want to do here instead is I want to pass down a parameter, and let's just call this one catches like so, and then I want to pass down the category ID. All right, let's head over to blocks controller and let's refactor here our code. So here let's define cat as params, okay, and then I want to make here an if statement. So if Kate is not nil, well then I want to define blocks to block where the category ID is equal to that, and if not, well then I just want to render all blocks, and then let's close this and let's remove here this from the bottom. And now when I head over and refresh the page and click here one of these links, for example gossip, you see that it worked. We got here as the parameter the ID of 3, and currently we don't see any posts. That's because I haven't created any posts with the category 3 gossip. But if I click on games, where no, I have created a post before, you see we get now first of the ID of 1, and as you can see we get all the posts that are associated with games. And if I click on conspiracy theory, it gives us all the posts back that are associated with this category. So obviously this is already working, which is pretty awesome. Now I want to style now this so that this looks much more nicer than it currently does. But all in all, we are finished. Okay, so this was pretty much the last feature, and it's obviously just an additional feature, but I think a very important feature, because now categories make really sense, right? Alright, so let's take care of the styles itself. And obviously I won't spend here too much time on that, but just for the sake of it, let's add here, we have a col MD4. Let's see, let's wrap up the col MD4s inside a col MD8. Let's take all of that and paste it here in. And then under the col MD8, let's create another col MD4. And here, let's paste that in. Right, so with that, it should be normally aligned like so. And I guess, alright, so I found the issue. Just make sure that you have, I mean, you can pause the video here and just double check everything, because it's sometimes a thing with these styles, and obviously I'm not a web designer, but you know, I've added here under the row the col MD10 and wrapped that up. So everything inside here is now wrapped up inside the col MD10, and then I added an additional row to this here, to the iteration, and now it works. And then just like I said before, I added here the col MD2 like so, and now it's aligned just like I wanted it. Let's increase here the size again to 4, and this one we can change to 4, and this one to 8. There we go. Actually, we can leave it as it was. I think looked better before. There we go. Alright, so let's take care of this here quickly. I will create the div card inside here. Actually, before I do that, yeah, div card header, and let's just say categories, and then inside the cards body, let's add these here and paste them in just like so. Let's add also to the card itself a margin top of 3, so that it's more nicely aligned to the other cards as well. Let's take here and add some styles. So for that, I would just use list groups, and we just copy this here as always from the Bootstrap documentation and paste that here in. And then I will take the, first off, I will wrap up just before the div from the card body, the UL. Close it, and then let's move this here just under the UL list, and let's take the link and paste it here in. And for the counts, or actually let's check out how this looks now. Category, oh, made here mistake. Let's put the end tag down here. Alright, so obviously this is working. I also want to display the live count, so all we need to do here is to get the category blocks count. With that, we should get the count. There we go. We have 3 posts that are associated with the games and 2 posts that are associated with conspiracy theories. This is obviously working. Now, the only thing that I obviously don't like is how this currently looks like. So I guess this has something to do with that I'm only using here a col MD2. And because I made this larger, I need to make this here one smaller. Just like I had it before, actually. Yeah, seems like that's the only way to do that, to be honest. I think we can increase here the call from the card, so that we are, with that, we are only displaying two cards, but I think that looks actually much better. All right, so if I click on conspiracy theory, this will update that immediately without really going to another path. So keep that in mind. We have not added new paths or whatsoever. So with that setup, we just made this function work without adding a bunch of new paths or functions and things like that. It's a really clean solution. And alright, so we are pretty much finished with the tutorial. We added blocks with a full CRUD. We added categories with a full CRUD, connected them with the block, added styles. You also learned how to add Bootstrap to Ray 6. We used webpacker and npm, the new workflow in Ray 6 to do that. We added all these styles, and then we also talked about how we can associate or search for specific posts without adding a bunch of new paths and additional functions and things like that. So keep that in mind. A lot of tutorials out there, not that I want to bash them or whatsoever, but a lot of tutorials like add additional paths and things like that. And there are many ways to achieve that, but I think with what we have done, we have probably found the cleanest solution to do that. And it's also super fast, as you can see. And of course, this is all working. So if I click here on create block, and create here maybe something, what is maybe for code basecamp, learn how to, or blocks with categories. Awesome tutorial. Make sure to subscribe and make sure to like the video. Thanks for watching. So if I click here on create block, you see that I created the blog post, and if I go back, we have now here for code basecamp as category one blog post. Awesome. So with that, I will wrap up this video here. I hope you learned a lot. If so, I just want to remind you, because it helps a lot. If you enjoy my content, if you learned something from this video, make sure to like it and make sure to subscribe. I'm currently at almost 500 subscribers. I'm actually at 486 subscribers. It would be actually great if we could make it to 500 until the end of December. So again, if you like my content, if you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe, because it helps really a lot. Alright, so with that being said, I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, if something was not clear, make sure to use the comment section. Other than that, thanks for watching as always, and see you maybe next time. Bye.